The courthouse stood taller than I remembered, not grand, just cold and blank, like it had no interest in who walked through its doors. I stood outside for a moment, folder pressed against my chest like armor, my heart doing this slow, angry thump in my throat. I knew they didn't want me here. The last message from Eleanor, my late husband's sister, had been crystal clear. If you show up, Velma, don't expect a welcome. It wasn't just a warning, it was a ban. But I wasn't just walking into court, I was walking into war. For my son, for my husband's name, for something that still meant something in this family, even if they'd forgotten. 2 weeks ago, they called it a family strategy meeting. Said it was about aligning our approach. I brought a notepad, wore a soft blouse to look non-confrontational, sat at the edge of their living room while they passed around coffee like it was communion. Eleanor leaned in first. Velma, we've been talking, and we think it's best if you don't speak in court. She smiled like she was offering me tea. Then came the twist of the knife. We just don't want to embarrass ourselves. Not yourself. Ourselves. Then from across the room, his mother, Dorothy, added, You were never really one of us, Velma. She said it like a fact, like I'd been invited to the dinner table by mistake. I don't remember what I said back. Maybe I didn't say anything. The moment wrapped around me like a wet sheet, humiliating and cold. I left quietly, but I didn't forget. Not one word. And then, days later, at a Sunday brunch at their house, because I still tried to keep the peace, I heard my name float in from the kitchen. Laughter. Then Eleanor's voice. She still thinks she's in the will. Dorothy replied, Velma's whole personality is just not making waves. She thinks being quiet makes her smarter. Then James, my brother-in-law, chimed in, not knowing I'd just stepped into the doorway. Nah, it just makes her invisible. They didn't flinch when they saw me, didn't apologize either, just went on eating as if I were a ghost in their house. I drove home in silence, didn't cry, didn't even curse. I just sat at the kitchen table, opened up my husband's old briefcase, and started reading. Case law, custody rights, probate codes, the whole messy library of justice. At night, I reached out to Mrs. Redmond from church, used to be a legal secretary. She let me borrow her notes from the years she worked with probate attorneys. Courage isn't the absence of fear, she told me, handing over a thick binder. It's what you do after fear shows up. Every night after that, I studied like my life depended on it, because it did. So that morning, when I walked into the courthouse alone, I wasn't clueless. I wasn't begging to be accepted. I wasn't even mad. I was ready. Their eyes hit me like shrapnel the moment I walked in. Eleanor with her practiced tight jaw, James pretending he didn't see me, Dorothy in beige like she owned the system. I sat across the aisle from them. Didn't make a scene. Just opened my folder, clicked my pen. I could feel their discomfort. Good. This wasn't about revenge. It was about showing my son that silence didn't mean weakness. I don't need to be invited, I whispered, to fight for what's right. Then the judge came in. He was older than I remembered, but sharp-eyed. The kind of man who'd seen too much to pretend anymore. He glanced across the room and stopped, just for a second, on me. And he nodded. Not the kind of nod you give a stranger. It was slight, knowing, respectful. The others didn't catch it at first, but I saw James stiffen, Eleanor narrow her eyes. They knew something shifted. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have guessed, was that long before my husband passed, he had written a letter, a personal one, not to them, to the judge. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. As the courtroom fell silent, the moment I had waited for finally arrived. But it wasn't what anyone expected. Dinner was quiet, too quiet. I set down the casserole dish like I'd done every Thursday for the past year. Same place, same time. No one else at the table but my son, Marcus, 16, tall for his age, eyes too sharp for his own good. He poked at his food, barely eating. He didn't look up when he said, Mom, I saw something weird today. I kept my tone even. Yeah? He shrugged. Online. Someone shared a post, had your name in it. I didn't flinch, didn't ask. But inside, My chest tightened like a lid screwed on too tight. I nodded and passed him the peas. We ate in silence for a few minutes, the forks scraping too loud against our plates. Then he looked up, real still, and said, "Why don't they respect you?" That hit harder than I expected. I reached for my glass of water, but my hand paused mid-air. I wanted to say, because they're cruel. I wanted to say, because they never saw me as one of them. But instead, I smiled and said, "Sometimes people don't know how to treat others right." He stared at me, that teenage mix of confusion and hurt behind his eyes. And I knew right then, I hadn't just taught him dignity, I'd taught him silence. After he went to bed, I stood by the sink a long while, staring out the window into the dark backyard. I wasn't tired. I wasn't even angry yet. I was unsettled. Like something was coming and it had my name on it. I pulled out my phone, found the post he was talking about. It took a moment to load. There it was. Screenshots from a private group chat. Family members, my in-laws, nieces, even James's kids, laughing at me, at how I dressed, at how I talked. Eleanor's message read, "Velma's trying to play lawyer now. Bless her little GED brain." Dorothy added a gif of a mule carrying a pile of books. The comments below were worse. One of the nephews said, "We should live stream her court speech. Make it a comedy hour." They didn't think I'd see it. That was their first mistake. I didn't slam the phone. Didn't cry. I just set it down, real soft, like it was glass. Then I sat. For maybe 10 minutes. Maybe an hour. Just breathing. Just knowing. Knowing this wasn't about pride anymore. It was about truth. And truth, once it wakes up, doesn't go back to sleep. A voice stirred inside me. Not mine, my mother's. "Some women carry whole families on their backs," she used to say, "and still get asked what they bring to the table." I carried them. Every dinner, every birthday, every fake smile I put on when I wanted to scream. And still, I was never enough. Never invited in, just tolerated, until I wasn't. I pulled out my old notebook, the one I used when my husband passed, pages already half filled with legal jargon and reminders. I started writing again. Not to vent, to remember. Next morning, I was folding laundry when my phone buzzed. Sabine's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated, then picked up. Her voice was sharp, not even pretending anymore. "Velma," she said, "I'm telling you this once. If you interfere in court, I'll make sure your name gets buried." I didn't answer. She went on. "I know a reporter at the Chronicle. You think people feel sorry for widows? Wait until they think you're delusional too." I laughed, not loud, just one dry breath through my nose. Then I said, "I've been invisible long enough, Sabine. I think I can survive a spotlight now." Click. She hung up. That was the first time I felt, not afraid, but awake. Later that afternoon, I sat at my desk and began drafting a letter. Not to them, to the judge. I didn't send it, just wrote it to get clear. "I'm not seeking revenge," I wrote. "I'm restoring balance." I gathered screenshots, tagged the messages, backed them up. I recorded a short message from Marcus, his voice shaky but strong, tucked everything into a folder labeled Truth. That evening, I tucked Marcus into bed, kissed his forehead. He was half asleep, mumbling about a math test. I stepped out onto the porch. The night air felt different, like it had weight, like it knew something too. I opened my phone again, scrolled through the screenshots. Didn't hurt this time. I was past the hurt. Now I was documenting. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. Just one message. "I know what they did to you. Meet me." The message was still there on my screen. "I know what they did to you. Meet me." I stared at those words long enough for the screen to dim. My finger hovered over the reply button, then pulled back. Could have been one of them. Sabine playing games, or worse, someone fishing for a reaction, trying to bait me into slipping up. Still, it didn't feel like one of their moves. The tone was too plain, too direct. I didn't answer, not right away. Instead, I spent hours walking circles in my kitchen, cleaned the counter, wiped the fridge handle twice, made coffee I didn't drink. I even took out the trash just to feel the air. Cold drizzle hit my face like a slap that didn't leave a mark. Finally, I replied with 3 words: where and when. The answer came quick, like they'd been waiting. 3 p.m., Taylor's Cafe, Montrose. I told Marcus I was running out to grab a few things. He didn't ask questions, just nodded, his headphones already half on. I grabbed my coat and left, locking the door behind me like it meant something. The drive was short, maybe 10 minutes. Just enough time to rehearse what I'd say if it went south. Just enough time to wonder who the hell would stick their neck out for me now. Taylor's Cafe was one of those quiet places that hadn't changed in decades. Linoleum floors, chipped mugs, and a waitress who called everyone on. I chose the seat in the corner, back to the wall, eyes on the door. That's how you sit when you've learned not to trust comfort. He walked in like someone used to being unnoticed, late 50s, maybe early 60s, gray at the temples, long coat still dripping from the rain. He scanned the room once, spotted me, and came straight over. "Velma Ray?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm Warren. Mind if I sit?" I nodded. He didn't order anything, just pulled a thick envelope from inside his coat and set it on the table between us. "I used to be a clerk for Harris County Probate. Back when your husband's estate came through." I waited, let him speak first. "I was approached. Your in-laws. They didn't want certain documents filed on time, said they'd handle the family stuff privately. I was younger then. I didn't think twice." My breath caught, but I didn't speak. Not yet. He cleared his throat. "But it didn't sit right. So I kept copies, just in case." I finally asked, "You mean they buried his will?" He nodded. "And they made sure your name disappeared with it." The walls of the cafe didn't move, but something in me cracked wide open. Not shock, not even anger, not at first, just confirmation, cold and steady. "They said I was imagining it," I said. "I know," he replied. "They count on that. On women being too polite to raise hell." He slid the envelope across the table. I picked it up with both hands, careful, like it might fall apart. Inside, copies of estate documents. A letter on lined paper, ink faded but still legible. My late husband's handwriting. I knew it instantly. The way he looped his Y's. The way he always crossed his T's like he was underlining truth. The letter was addressed to the judge. "If Velma ever finds herself alone in this fight," it read, "I ask that you remember she was always the one who stood by me, even when my family turned cold." I read it twice. The third time, my eyes blurred, not from tears, but from something heavier, like grief had finally decided to show up in full uniform. Warren broke the silence. "They're already moving against you. I've heard rumors, legal filings, PR angles. You're not safe, Velma, but you are right." I nodded once. Enough. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. Just the sound of wipers, slow and rhythmic, cutting through mist. I thought back to the day he died, how they took charge like I was an afterthought. Funeral plans made without my voice, photos chosen without asking me. His obituary printed without a single mention of our marriage. This wasn't just family tension. This was theft, personal and legal. I remembered a quote I'd read somewhere. "The truth doesn't set you free. It dismantles everything first." Now I understood. Back home, I worked fast. I printed 3 copies of everything Warren gave me. One went in the old Bible at the church, one in my desk drawer, and one inside a lockbox I hadn't touched since Marcus was born. I scrubbed through my old emails, deleted every half-written plea I'd sent to Eleanor, to Dorothy, to anyone who'd pretended to care. I called Pastor Reynolds, asked for a private meeting, said it was for advice, but he heard the edge in my voice and didn't push. That night, I noticed the black SUV again, same one I'd seen last week. Parked down the street. Lights off, still as death. I didn't panic. I took a photo, noted the plate, then turned off my porch light. "The more truth you hold," I whispered, "the quieter you learn to move." I was pouring tea when my email dinged. Subject line, "Cease and desist." The sender, a law firm I recognized, used by Eleanor once for a zoning dispute. The email was short, formal. You are hereby instructed to refrain from attending court under penalty of defamation. I stared at the screen, not blinking. The cursor blinked in the reply field, waiting, but I didn't type. My hands stayed still, but my eyes were burning cold. I drove in through my old neighborhood under a dim sky. Rain softened the edges of the streetlights. Every muffled drip against the windshield felt like the world pushing me inward. By the time I pulled into my driveway, exhaustion wasn't an option anymore. Marcus met me at the door, his brow knit. "Mom, you look tired." That was understatement, but I offered a quick smile. "Just had a long day." I took the mail from the latch. One envelope bore a law firm's name I recognized immediately. Eleanor's firm. My stomach churned as I stared at it. I slipped Warren's envelope under my coat, hoping no one would notice. Inside, I felt the weight of decisions I hadn't asked for. Later, the invitation came. My parents-in-law were holding a charity luncheon. Open to contributors, they called it. I didn't belong, but Eleanor texted, "You're welcome to attend, Velma." I didn't trust it. Still, I went. I walked into the event in a simple but clean dress. No extravagance. Just presence. Cameras flickered at the entrance, glancing, evaluating. Sabine sat on stage, her posture perfect, scanning the crowd with practiced disdain. When my face showed up on a big screen, unexpectedly, Sabine started speaking. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "we have a guest who thinks she belongs here, but she's never truly been ours. She has always been a charity case." The screen flashed photos of me, side by side with their accomplishments, as if to mock the contrast. Comments and reactions lit up my phone instantly, humiliation echoing through digital halls. My face burned, my throat tightened. I nearly walked off stage, but then I stood, cleared my voice, and demanded the live feed be paused. She stared at me. Shock, betrayal, control. She lost her momentum that moment. I excused myself and went to the restroom, locked the door, slid down the wall. I let myself feel the shame, the indignation, but just for a moment. I wiped tears I hadn't meant to allow, then stood back up. I deleted offensive comments, archived screenshots, texted Orion, "Check church archives tomorrow." Isolde later confirmed a clause missing in their filing, one that could shift the line of authority. I felt a cautious hope flicker, but my phone rang next. Journalist asking about a story. Sabine's rumor campaign, he said, was gaining traction. She reportedly told him I was bankrupt. I didn't panic. I spoke slowly. "I'll share the facts, or nothing." He warned, "That's your risk." I hung up. Silence was my weapon now. I sat at my laptop and drafted a statement. Not defensive, but firm. I backed up Warren's docs to offsite servers. I rehearsed what I'd say if asked. Marcus sat near me, reading. I told him softly, "I will not let lies define me." The night deepened. Streetlights flickered outside. The house around me felt heavier. My resolve felt like it had grown roots. Late, my phone rang, unknown number. A calm voice. "They're about to make their move. You should be ready." I stared at my reflection in the dark glass of the screen. I didn't fear it. I just nodded with something whole inside me. I pulled into the church parking lot just as afternoon shadows stretched long across the pavement. Overhead clouds pressed like weight. I stiffened, greeting myself in the rearview mirror, as though steadying a soldier before battle. I walked inside behind the doors of Pastor Reeves's office, the hush of the hall swallowing every footstep. He looked up, soft eyes, steady presence. "Velma," he said. Before I spoke, he held his hand. "I've heard. Part of me still can't believe it." I told him of threats, the mockery, the document leaks. He didn't flinch. He reminded me how my husband stood for fairness, even when pushed back. "Faith isn't about letting it go," he told me softly. "It's about not letting it define you." He offered the church vault room, safe, out of sight, for all my files, for me to build quietly. I nodded. His calm steadied the storm inside. Word from Orion came just as I walked out. An email, scans of an old bank statement. My breath shook. It showed a joint account opened by me and my husband. It had never been disclosed in probate. Even worse, Sabine's signature appeared on paperwork tied to that account years ago. They buried it, hidden it. I stared at the screen. My heart pounded loud in my ears. They stole that too. They buried the truth under paper trails. I'm digging it up, I whispered. Rage and validation mixed. It felt like at last someone saw what I always knew was there. Walking toward my car after church, I caught neighbors' glances. Conversations hushed, phones turned. On a small blog, I saw a headline, "Widow with a Motive?" Under it, my face and a smear paragraph. My cheeks stung. Even in anger, I felt the weight of shame. I did something I rarely do. I shared the post to my own page with one line. "You'll soon hear the full truth. I won't be silenced again." It felt small. It felt dangerous. I got to my car. Sabine stood nearby, leaning casually against the door, arms crossed. My heart squeezed, but I eased out. She slid off. "We should talk," she said. "Back off from this court fight, and I'll make sure your name isn't dragged any further." It was strange, almost polite, but she followed with barbs. Ungrateful, unstable, a woman clinging to ghosts. A parent passing by filmed part of the exchange on their phone. I stood tall, voice calm. "You've already dragged it. Now watch me lift it." The camera's lens glinted in her eyes. She recoiled first, then stormed off. I drove home slow, rebuilding that conversation in my mind. Inside, I retrieved the letter my husband had written, the one Warren showed me. I placed it beside our family photo in the bedroom. My fingers traced his words. I sat at the desk and began drafting my legal statement, not begging, but exposing. I opened my voice memo app and recorded, "No matter what happens next, you'll know I stood up." I played it once, stopped it. Then backed up my files, secure copies where no one could reach easily. Later, coming out of the bathroom, I saw the court calendar app on my phone. The hearing date moved earlier. My breath caught. The clock was speeding. The house was quiet, too quiet for what I was about to do. I laid everything out on the kitchen table, labeled folders, printouts, voice memos, 2 copies of each document Warren had given me. I opened my laptop and practiced reading my statement out loud, again and again, until the words didn't tremble. I moved like I was prepping for court already, because in my head I kept hearing Warren's voice. "They're on guard now." He wasn't warning me, he was preparing me. I turned to the windows. A siren howled in the distance. Could have been an ambulance. Could have been something else. Either way, it reminded me, this wasn't over. I looked at my son's school photo beside the printer. That was why I fought. Not pride, not revenge, just the plain truth. No child should grow up thinking their mother was weak. I wouldn't let mine. Then it happened. I wasn't even finished drafting the statement when my phone buzzed, a link from a news site. I opened it and felt like my chest collapsed in. There it was. Inside the Wexley family secrets, widow claims fraud. My name in the headline. My documents quoted. I hadn't released any of this yet. Not officially, not publicly. My mouth went dry. Someone leaked it. Someone close. I sat back in the chair, closed my eyes for 3 seconds, then opened them again. I deleted the post I had scheduled, then called Orion. "Check your email security," I told him. "Somebody got to our files." I tried to stay calm, but inside, I was boiling. I went down the list of people who had access. One name stuck out, Elliot. He worked for the in-laws for years, ran errands, kept his mouth shut. He had helped scan documents a few weeks ago, when I thought I could trust him. I sent a message asking to meet. "No pressure," I wrote. "Just want to talk." He agreed. Nervous, short. We met at a quiet diner just off the highway. I paid for his coffee, smiled politely, then leaned in and said, "You leaked my files, didn't you?" He stuttered, said he didn't know what I was talking about. I kept my eyes on him. I hit record on my phone, kept it face down on the table. I asked again, "Did Sabine tell you to do it?" He blinked hard. Didn't answer, but his silence was enough. I said, "You owe me the truth. Now." He hesitated. then pulled a wrinkled envelope from his coat. "I wasn't supposed to have this," he mumbled. Inside it, my breath stopped, was a letter, my husband's handwriting, an amendment to his will, naming me as sole decision-maker for a property he'd inherited from his grandfather, dated, signed, witnessed, never filed, never mentioned, hidden. "Vesperine made sure no one saw that," Elliot said, barely above a whisper. I opened the letter right there at the table. My hands shook. My eyes burned. It was real. I looked at Elliot and said low and clear, "This was mine. You let them take it. You helped." He didn't answer. And he didn't have to. I stood, slipped the letter into my purse, and left. When I got home, I called Isolde Rayner and told her what I found. She didn't speak for a moment, then said, "We need to get this in the docket immediately." I told her I would. Then I called 3 community leaders I'd worked with through pro bono cases years back, men and women whose families I'd helped keep their homes, get custody, clear debts. I said, "They're trying to bury me. I need your voices when the time comes." They didn't hesitate. "We got you," one said. "They don't know who they're up against." By nightfall, I was back at the kitchen table, drafting a press release. It wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was a promise. I had the truth, and I was bringing it to court. I saved it, queued it for morning. Then I walked into the living room, sat in the dark, and let the quiet wrap around me like armor. I wasn't afraid. I was focused. My phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. It was a photo, the front porch of Elliot's house, papers scattered, a busted mailbox. Under the image, "You just poked the bear." I stared at the screen. My pulse didn't race. My hands didn't shake. But my breath changed. The hands that hid the truth were moving. And I was going to catch them, no matter the cost. I arrived at the courthouse well before my hearing time, folding my documents tightly, heart throttling. The lobby felt colder than I remembered. I watched as Eleanor, Sabine, and their entourage glided in, heads held high. Their whispers and sideways stares grazed me. Every memory of threats, forged signatures, secret leaks circled in my mind. I inhaled, held firm. I didn't come here for permission. I came to reclaim what was mine. I sat where I could see both the entrance and the bench. I needed the field of vision. They'd hidden lies behind smiles before. This was my moment, quietly waiting for the storm to break. They opened with their bomb. The opposing counsel stood and laid out what he called a disclosure document. Signed years ago, they claimed, which supposedly relinquished all my rights to my husband's assets. The room stilled. My throat tightened when I saw the signature projected on the screen. It was stylized, practiced, but wrong. It was a forgery. My cheeks heated under eyes all around me. I signaled to Isolde. She caught the brief motion and rose to object. "Your Honor, that document's authenticity is in question," she said. The lawyer feigned surprise. Sabine's face froze. A hush slithered across the room. I leaned back, not out of fear, but calculation, reading reactions, holding silent until the lie collapsed on its own weight. Then they called me. I stood, hands steady. The questions came, direct, intended to destabilize. "Mrs. Ray, why is your name missing from these papers?" I replied evenly. "Because someone removed it." The gallery murmured, "Do you deny signing this alleged release?" I held up the buried amendment from Chapter 6. "I never signed it. I'm here to prove it was hidden from me." Faces shifted. Some frown, some stare. A judge's brow knit. The filing clerk handed over the original amendment. I watched it land before the judge. The courtroom exhaled. Before I could ride that momentum, Sabine's lawyer dropped the next bomb. "Your Honor, we've just received a motion from Mrs. Ray to withdraw her objection." The courtroom gasped again. My heart lurched. "That's a fraud," I said before the judge. I demanded the document be shown. He displayed it on screen, my name, my signature. They forged that too. The watermark was off, the paper stock different. Sabine's expression flicked to panic. I demanded an audit. The judge nodded, calling a brief recess. That one move exposed their desperation and greed all at once. After the judge called break, I slipped into a hallway corner. My legs trembled, but my voice stayed inside me, solid. I flipped through my folder. Photos of my husband, documents, that amendment, the forged withdrawal. This moment would be remembered because I refused to let falsehoods rewrite it. I texted Orion. "Tonight, we mobilize backups." He responded, "Understood." "Move when ready." The hallway lights felt colder as I walked out into the daylight. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, a live notification. Someone had just streamed my cross-examination on social media. They edited my answers, clipped my calm resolve into bite-sized mockery. "Widow rattles in court." Comments cascaded beneath it. Derision, disbelief, accusations. I clenched my jaw. The fight had spread beyond those walls, but so had my voice. And I wasn't going silent now. I arrived early at the courthouse again, before the halls filled with cameras and whispers. The press vans lined the curb, their lights off, but lenses trained inward. Banners fluttered with half memes and slogans. "Justice for Velma," and "Truth won't be buried." I walked through the main doors, tried not to feel every eye on my back. A reporter I recognized from a smear piece last month stood near the entrance. He lifted his camera, gave me a nod I didn't return. I kept my head low, my grip on my folder firm. This was the stage now, the world watching, and I was stepping up. As opening arguments began, all chatter hushed. Then the cable feed broke. Sabine's team played a recording. My voice distorted and clipped. "They never saw me as enough," or so the snippet made it sound. The courtroom jolted. I froze mid-breath. The projection showed me speaking. Words I never said, twisted into accusation. I heard gasps, the sharp intake of breath. Sabine's lips curved just enough. Their plan? Drown me in doubt. But Isolde stood, cutting through the stillness. "Objection," she demanded. "We request the full, unedited audio." The judge hesitated. The gallery shifted. That moment split before and after. She pulled out the full tape from Warren's archive. Hit play. The version played was unmistakably mine. Entire conversations taken in context. My tone explanatory, not hostile. The silenced parts revealed how they chopped me into villain before the room. The court erupted in gasps, some surprised, some ashamed. Validation rose through me, slow flame. I found the courage to stand. "Your Honor, I move to enter this full recording as evidence," I said clear. The judge nodded, eyes sharp. I felt strength settle in my bones. During the break, I entered a sparse media room. Flashbulbs went off. I stood there, in the same dress Sabine had once mocked, soft blue, modest cut, nothing dramatic. But today it felt like armor. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward, expecting weakness. Instead, I said quietly, firmly, "You see me now, not a projection of your lies." The press scribbled. The flash of lights felt like truth cutting through smoke. We returned to the courtroom. Judge Magnus leaned forward, reviewing the newly admitted evidence. He asked probing questions to opposing counsel. Why was the forged document hidden? Who granted access to it? Why was these audio edits omitted in disclosures? He turned to me, giving me the floor. I stood, holding conviction in my voice. "The amendment was real," I said. "Hidden, not lost." The room's tension tightened under his gaze. Everyone waited. Then the announcement came. Recess. As desks cleared, I saw the box tumble. The in-law's lawyer dropped it. Files, notebooks, documents spilled from it across the floor. My eyes tracked Sabine's face. It blanched. The courtroom froze. The box lay in open view, their secrets now visible by accident or fate. I didn't move. Well, I just watched, because in that moment, the masks slipped, and everything they'd worked to bury began to breathe again. The morning air inside the courthouse felt still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. When Judge Magnus returned with the verdict, I didn't look at anyone, just folded my hands and waited. His voice carried evenly. The court ruled in my favor. The words landed softly but struck deep. For a second, silence hung heavy. Then the shuffle of reporters, the faint gasp from the in-laws' bench. Sabine rose without meeting my eyes. Her heels clicked against the marble floor until the sound faded. The cameras snapped, but I didn't smile. I only closed my eyes and whispered a prayer, not of triumph, but of release. Dignity was all I wanted to walk out with. Outside the chamber, Isolde approached, her face gentler than I'd seen in weeks. She handed me a small envelope sealed in brown wax. Warren left this with me, said it should only reach you if justice was served. I broke the seal slowly, careful not to tear his handwriting. Inside was a letter in that uneven scrawl of his, trembling from age and guilt. He wrote that after his stroke, he had discovered Sabine's forgeries, but lacked the strength to confront her. He'd trusted that someday I would. He thanked me for not letting the truth die with him. And tucked beside the page was a sketch he'd drawn of me in the garden, sunlight over my shoulder. My throat tightened. He hadn't been the villain they painted him to be, just a man too weary to fight at the end. I folded the letter back carefully, forgiving him in silence. By late afternoon, I drove out to the Coldrick family cemetery, the back road lined with sycamores. Theron came with me, quiet as ever, hands steady on the wheel. The sun was dropping, turning the gravestones gold. I carried flowers and the signed court document, the weight of both more symbolic than real. At Warren's headstone, I knelt. "I didn't win," I said softly. "I just finished what was left undone." I laid the verdict beside the flowers, then placed the letter on top. "Now you're heard too." The breeze lifted the corner of the page and set it gently back down. For once, I felt no bitterness, no fire, only peace. That evening, back home, Theron brewed coffee while I sorted papers one last time. The house finally felt still. We talked quietly across the table. "You're free now," he said. I shook my head. "No one's free until this stops happening to others." We decided then to establish a trust fund, named after Warren and Elowin, to support seniors caught in similar legal traps. It wasn't revenge, it was repair. "They wanted silence," I told him. "So we'll leave a voice instead." He nodded, and that was all we needed. A few days later, I stood at a community hall podium, lights bright but warm. The crowd was mostly older folks, faces that understood the exhaustion of being overlooked. My story had gone viral, but not because of scandal. It was the calm that people clung to, the quiet refusal to bow. I ended my short speech with words I'd learned the hard way. Truth doesn't scream, it stands. The applause came slow, then steady, until the room felt alive again. I smiled but didn't linger on stage. It wasn't about me anymore. As I left the hall, a young woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Ma'am, could I talk to you? My mother's going through something like this." Her eyes were wet, her hands clutching a folder like I once had. I stopped, looked at her, and nodded. "Let's sit," I said. "Tell me everything." The story I thought had ended wasn't mine alone anymore. It was the start of someone else's courage,